Okay, so the whole focus for today is on recording macros and then looking at the code that gets generated and modifying them. The context we'll be working in is taking a web query. So that's where we're going to go. But let me give you a little background on this. Suppose like the context that we'll be working in. In fact, let's go ahead and kind of start by making a worksheet. So here I've got sheet 1. I'm going to change the name of the sheet from sheet 1 to say tickers. Tickers. Now, wow, that's really bad. Maybe I'll just leave it as tickered. Tickers. Suppose that you are hired as an internship, and your responsibility every morning is to take a list of tickers and go get some information from them. Ticker. Here's a question. Yeah. There's something dangling off my robe. Oh, it's the microphone from the other class. Yeah, I hope the next teacher in that classroom doesn't need it. And I hope it's not still on, because they just heard all that. Oh, no, good, at least it's off. We're wondering what's going on here. Oh, where was I? Oh yeah, tickers. Okay, so suppose that you're hired for an internship and your job is every morning when you come in, you got to go get information from some website for a dozen or more tickers. Let's go and put some tickers in here. Let's do my favorite one, Southwest Airlines, Feel the Love, Google, Apple, American Express, Ford, GM, ExxonMobil. That's enough. There could be more. Can you imagine any company today hiring a human to go and do some kind of menial chore like that? Oh yeah. In fact, that's the whole reason they have interns in the first place. Why? Is to do all the work that nobody else wants to do, that no human would want to do. We're going to hire an intern to do it. I was really surprised one year when one of my former students came back after his internship. He came to my office and he said, Professor Allen, I just wanted to let you know I had a great internship, and it was all because of VBA. Oh, well, sit down and let's talk about it. His internship was at Amazon. And his job every morning was to go and get the prices or to look up information about a particular set of products. And I thought to myself, you're kidding me. That can't be true. You're telling me a fib. Because of all the companies you think that would know how to automatically connect onto websites and get data, Amazon's at the top of the list. Who's above them? Maybe Google, but maybe not. And I said, you're kidding me. At Amazon? I said, surely they've got programs that do this automatically. He said, well, yes, for almost all their products they do, but I was working with digital cameras. Digital cameras are special. What's so special about the pricing of digital cameras? Anybody know? Who decides the price on the digital camera? The manufacturer decides. The manufacturer says, you're going to sell this camera, you are not going to sell it below $799, whatever that price is. So you can sell it for more if you want, but you can't sell it below this price. So how's someone going to compete? How are you going to compete? You can't compete on price. What are you going to do? Be creative for a moment, folks. Here, I'm asking for an answer. You can't compete on price, but you want to compete. How are you going to compete? You could make your own camera. Amazon probably not going to go in the camera manufacturing business, but that would be one way to compete in the market. Well, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. But the problem is, in this space, they don't compete on price because they are contractually obligated not to sell below a certain price. In the back. Aha! That's exactly what they do. We do a bundle. So the way that the kind of upper end digital camera market works is we say, you're going to pay $799 for this camera, but if you order today, we're going to throw in a tripod. And we're going to throw in some kind of fancy remote that you can take a picture of yourself when you're not standing by the camera. And we're going to throw in a bunch of whatever else, maybe free prints for a year or something. And so the competition is outside the way that Amazon is normally used to looking at prices and finding out what competitors are selling products for. And so this division hired this intern. That was his internship. It was to go in and every day go look at what's being bundled with all of these competitors so they can know, are we still being competitive? He started on Wednesday, and by Friday, he was ready to commit suicide. You know, it was just mindless. Go and get this information, get this information. He said, the whole time I was thinking about this stuff we did on day 3 of the VBA class, where we're doing stuff with web queries. Certainly I could do something that would do this with a web query. And so after he got off work on Friday, he worked late into the night Friday. He worked all day Saturday. He confessed to me. I even worked Sunday. I didn't even go to church on Sunday. And by Monday morning, I had a VBA application that did my job with a push of a button. Now, do you think his supervisor was impressed with that? Oh yeah, he was impressed. In fact, before they hired him, they thought, we're just going to have IT develop something for us to do this. And so they had talked to the IT department, whatever the IT department at Amazon is called. and they said, hey, we want you to run a program to do this for us. They said, great, we can do that. It's going to cost you $100,000 and it'll take us a year. But we're going to make it for you. And what did they say? Forget it, we'll hire an intern. And so when the intern comes back over the weekend in his spare time said, I built this thing that was supposed to take a year and cost $100,000, do you think he got a full-time offer? Oh yeah. Think he accepted it? So I don't want to work there. You're going to have me type all this stuff by hand. He had bigger fish to fry, apparently. So, what's that? Yeah, I probably asked him that question. I don't remember the answer, but it was probably like, there are other processes that we could use your skills on. They probably had him doing VBA for the rest of the time. But I'll tell you another story on that here in just a minute. I don't remember his name. Oh, really? Did he end up going to Amazon? Reed Clark? Oh, maybe he did. Well, that's still a good story. So, for those of you that didn't hear that, because you're on the recording, one of the students in class actually knows the person I was just talking about. And apparently he did go to Amazon, but ended up doing something in camera rentals for them rather than in camera purchasing. So, interesting. Okay, but I had another former student. Maybe no, this wasn't a former student. This was someone who had heard tales of this class and had taken an on-campus internship here at BYU. And it was something about they had like thousands and thousands and thousands of files that they had to catalog. It was like the whole file structure, and they had to go through and know, is this particular file in this folder? If it is, what's the size of it, and so forth. It was some kind of PDF archive or something they had to catalog. And it was kind of the same thing, this mind-numbing the task that no human wants to do. So what did they do? I hired an intern. So he came to me and he said, hey, Professor Sean, can you help me with this? And I did more than help him, because he didn't know this stuff at all. It took a couple hours, but I wrote a program that would just run through the whole structure and do exactly what they hired him to do. And I said, but listen, you don't get this for free. I need help at the Colonial Heritage Festival in July, so you're going to come help us set up and take down. He said, great, I'll be glad to help with that. His name was Evan. Evan. And so somehow I knew someone else. We were somehow connected, but anyway, I knew his uncle or something. So it was great. I think everything's going well. He shows up to help us set up for the Colonial Heritage Festival, July 4th through 6th at the Orm, at the Sarah Park in Orm. If you're in town, I hope you'll come. And hey, how'd everything go? Said, oh, they absolutely love the program. In fact, I completed my internship at the end of that week. Oh, what'd they have you do? Well, they didn't have anything else for me to do, and so they fired me. I said, you're kidding me. You've got to absolutely be kidding me. And he said, I'm not kidding. I said, oh, are you still going to help us take down, after this is over? He said, yeah, I'll still help you take down. So it was a really bad deal for him. So paid full price for the program and got fired for it. So, when you automate something, maybe you should be a little familiar with what the climate is. Maybe you just worked yourself out of a job. I don't know. Maybe you should just sit in your office with a Dr. Pepper and a bag of chips and push the button every once in a while. No, not all that fast. Okay. All right, so our chore here then today is to say we've got this arbitrary set of stock tickers. We do not know prior to this code running how many stock tickers there are or what the stock tickers are. So we've got to be able to figure that out by looking at the page. And we've got to go get this information. Let's say that what we have to get is the price-earnings ratio, PE ratio. Oops. And the earnings per share for each of these stock tickers. Well, if that's your job, how are you going to do it? If you just assigned that and you knew nothing about VBA, what would you do? Yeah, Google. It's probably on finance.google.com or finance.yahoo.com. And so we'll just go take a look at finance.yahoo.com. I think I opened it up already here. So here's finance.yahoo.com. They got some little quote lookup right over here. I'm going to put in Southwest Airlines. And here it is. Let's see. We got the current price. They're trading at $48.76. At least that was at close today. And we got the bid-ask spread. We got the range, 52 of the volume, average volume. Oh, here we go. Price earnings ratio and earnings per share. That's the information that we're looking for. And so if I were just doing this, it'd be great. Come here, copy, go back to Excel, paste, come back here, copy, go back to Excel, paste, next ticker. Copy, paste, next ticker. Now, if you're doing that, where is your mind? Where's your mind? What's your mind going to be on? What do you think? Let's say Deloitte hires you and this is what they have you do. What are you going to be thinking? I hate my job. I'm going to be working on my resume at the same time I'm doing this. The point is, your mind's going to be anywhere else but this. And as a result, what's going to happen? Errors, yeah. Because you're going to copy what you're supposed to paste. You're going to paste when you're supposed to copy. And this is a job that is not well suited to humans. Primarily because it's not going to grab your attention and you won't be focusing on it. Turns out it's really well suited for computers. Right? That's what they love to do. Mindless stuff. They don't have minds. No minds. They're great at mindless tasks. And so the big problem here is, what are the problems? Problems is it's going to take a little longer than probably should have to do it. And I don't know what else, but the big one is there will be errors in it. And if this ends up being things you're making decisions on, that's ugly. And so we want to automate this process. But before we do that, I want to kind of just explore this URL. So up here, we got HTTPS, finance.yahoo.com. That's the host. Here we have quote/love, so that's getting us to the resource on the host. And then we got this question mark here. So the question mark says, everything after the question mark, these are parameters. Before that question mark is getting me to the right resource on the server, after the question mark is, how are we going to tell that it's information about how that resource is supposed to operate with this particular request. So let's just look at what we have here. So the first one seems a little strange. So we have name value pairs, and so we have P equals love. And then the ampersand separates the next one. So P equals love. What do you think that is? What does that mean? Yeah, I'm not sure what the P stands for, but it's clearly Southwest Airlines. What seems strange about that being part of the parameters here? Yeah, it's already here. And what do you think this next one is? .tsrc equals fin search v1. This is probably just telling it something about what kind of search this was, but I doubt they need to know that this was fin search 1 to be able to pull up the information. So what I'm going to do here, just to kind of experiment here, and you should always feel comfortable experimenting with what I'm about to do. You're not going to break the internet by doing this. I got to tell you though, in the late 90s when I first started doing this kind of stuff, automatically working with web servers, I was a student at the University of Minnesota. And just in the weeks before this, my colleagues who were like a year behind me in the program had their computers confiscated by campus security because there had been some sale on domain names and they bought like daughterofthedevil.com for, like $3 a year or something. And so I don't know what they were doing with it, but some network administrator is looking, how come we have requests coming into the university to some site called daughterofthedevil.com? Well, they tracked it down to that office and they came and just, over the weekend, they confiscated all the hardware. Showed up Monday morning, and the office was just cleaned out. And so I was a little bit nervous. And every once in a while, the internet would just kind of quit working. It was much more regular in the 1990s than it is today. And I would think to myself, oh my heavens, did I do that? Are they going to be knocking on my door any moment now to come and confiscate my, but you can't do that. Like changing a URL is not going to break anything, okay? So we're just going to backspace over that. And we're going to see what happens if we just say quote/love. And we're going to see is that it's coming to the same place. It's our same information here. Price earnings ratio, it's all right there. So that's just going to make our lives a little bit simpler as we work with this URL than that whole long one. So anyway, that's just a kind of a little bit of a setup here. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at the process. I'm going to make another sheet. So I've got my ticker sheet all set up here. I've got several tickers. I got my columns, the PE ratio, earnings per share. I'm going to come and add a new sheet. Now this sheet, I'm going to call web query. Now, today we're not really talking about web queries today. It happens to be the context. What we're really talking about today is recording code, taking a look at it, and modifying it. So I got this sheet web query. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to build a web query, and we're going to put it on this page. And then, once the query exists, we're going to record ourselves going through the process once, taking one ticker symbol, modifying the web query to tell it, go to this ticker symbol, and then getting the data off and pulling it back to our sheet. We're going to train the computer how to do that. And so, step one, we're going to put that web query right here. We're going to put it in A2. I got something else in mind for A1 coming up, so let's put it in A2. Now, I think I mentioned this in class last time we were together, that recently Excel replaced their old web query, which had some nice things about it, but they really hadn't updated it, with a new, more powerful one. The trouble with the new, more powerful web query, it's not nearly so friendly for doing what we're doing today. We could still make it work, but there'd be a lot more overhead. The old one's going to be simpler. And I was so thrilled last semester when a student showed me how to find the old query still. It's not in the menu structure anymore, but you can still get to it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to build that web query, not by coming to the data tab and choosing from web. That would be the new web query. Instead, we're going to come up to here to where it says, tell me what you want to do. And I'm going to type in from web. Now, I got from web, get data from web, and from web. Those are all the new ones, but now here's one called from web in parentheses legacy. That's the one I'm after. This is going to bring up the old kind of former web query wizard, still around. How long is it going to be around? I don't know. But it's around long enough for us today to be able to say we're looking at recording and modifying. This gives us a much better experience. Now, what you probably never knew is that built right into Excel is a web browser. It's not a very good web browser. But if all your other web browsers break, you can always open up Excel and come in and use the web query wizard. It really is a web browser. So those error boxes that came up, the question was, what do those scripts mean? So in the olden days, way back in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, when we worked with the internet, it was really just, it was static pages. You had a page here, you hit a link and it takes you to another page. Here's the page. A link to another page, a link to another page. Then, when was it, 1996, 1997? Netscape said, we're going to make a programming language that our browser can process. So you put a program into a web page, and when the web page gets there, the browser will process it. What did they call that language? JavaScript. It's called JavaScript. They're going to call it LiveScript. They changed it to JavaScript at the last moment. At the time, Java was really popular, and it was probably a really good idea that they did. And so now, when a web page comes, it can have these really very complex programs that run once it gets there. And so that means the browser you're working with has to know how to run that code. And this browser, built into Excel, not so much. It doesn't, a lot of that code, some of the code it does know how to run, but not very much of it. And so you get that error. It's saying, I tried to run this script. I couldn't figure it out. You want to keep running, scripts on this page. If you say no, it'll keep trying anyway. If you say yes, it'll keep trying anyway. There's like two buttons there. They do exactly the same thing. And so you just click through them. The good news here is that the deficiency here is in the wizard. It's in this part that you see visually. Once we create the code with this, then it's going to be just fine. So we're not going to continually see this part. So it's a little bit uncomfortable here, but we'll be okay. So just keep hitting no until they quit coming up. And we're going to come in here and just put in some random website. It turns out if we try to go to the finance.yahoo.com site, it'll be 6 or 8 different things that we have to click through, plus about 10% of you, it'll never finish. You can keep clicking and it will just never stop. And so instead, we're just going to go to some random website. And when I say some random website, I mean random.com. No, random.org, random.org. Happens to be a website that has a really simple interface. There's no active content. At least if there is active content, it's simple enough that the web query wizard doesn't struggle with it. And I'm hoping that my import button will turn black here in just a minute. Looks like it finally came in. Okay, so it turns out this page does not have the data that we want, but the whole purpose of, the whole process here is going to be take a stock ticker, get the URL to the place we want to go, and then tell the web query wizard, the web query, to go to a different URL. So what we're trying to do here is just trying to get a web query into place. And so I'm not going to try to select any portion of the page, especially since I really don't seem to be seeing very much of this page. So I'm just going to come here and say import. So these little yellow arrows are supposed to say, I don't want the whole page, just give me part of the page, forget that, just import the whole page. It's already requested the page once. It's going to request the page again at this point. I'm not sure why it does. And then it's going to say, where do you want to put it? A2, and it's going to request it again. So it's kind of it's not the most efficient of code, but it's now getting it, and it will put the results of that page. So here it is. Random.org just lets you say, you got lots of different kind of random things you want. You want to roll some dice or draw a random card or something. They'll give you the options for that. That's what we see here. Here's the coin flipper, the dice roller, and so forth. So now we've got a web query. We have the object now has been created. So when we start recording our code, we're going to manipulate that object, but we want the object to be there before. You could actually have recorded yourself creating the web query, but then every time you run the macro, what's going to happen? Creating a new web query, and we don't want to keep creating copies. We don't use the same one and just modify it. Is that a question here or just stretching? Oh, very good. Okay, so now we've got a web query there. It starts in A2. We've got our tickers. I think we're ready to start. Now, before we start recording, we want to get the answers to two different questions. The first question is, after I've produced this macro, where should the active cell be when the user runs the macro? So when the user says, I'm going to run this macro, where is the active cell? Where should that be? And wherever that is, that's where we want to start recording. So what do you think? For this process, now realize what we're doing here is we're not going to record ourselves getting all 7 of these tickers. We're going to record ourselves getting 1 of these tickers, the information for 1 of these tickers, and then we're going to tell the code, do it over and over again. So we're only going to be going through this process once. So the question is, where, when the user goes to run this, where should the active cell be? We got millions of cells available. Where should we start? So A2 is a pretty good place. That's ticker. But we were saying whatever ticker. It doesn't really matter, but pick a ticker. So that's right. I like it. We'll put an A2. But yeah, that's it. That's how the user is going to signify this is the ticker I want the information for. Select the ticker. Now, second question is, when this code is done running, where should we leave off? Where do we want the active cell to leave off? So after it runs, where should the active cell be? Any thoughts? Yeah, the one right below it. Why the one below it? Yeah, we're ready to go again. You know, press it once. If you're ready, maybe the next thing you're going to do is run it again. You're just ready to go. You don't have to click and then run it. So that's good. So we want to make sure we're starting where the code should start. And then while we're doing our code, we want to make sure we end up where it should end up. So we've kind of answered those questions. I think we're ready to go. I'm already in the place that I want to start. I'm going to come to my developer tab, and I'm going to click on record macro. All right, now it says, great, you're recording a macro. What do you want to call it? Well, we're going to call it, we can give it a name. Now, there's some constraints here. You've got 27 letters, 27 characters to work with. You have 37 characters. You have letters, numbers, and the underscore character. Those are the only valid symbols here, and it has to start with a letter. So I'm going to call this stock data, S-T-O-C-K, underscore data. Maybe lowercase. So that's the name. We've got to give a name because we're going to get several statements together, and we've got to bind them together as a macro, and so we have to have a name for it. We're going to call it stock data. Oh, look at this. We get to put a shortcut key. So I'm going to put something here that I can remember. So why don't we do, stock data. Why don't you do Control S? Wait a minute. S sounds familiar. Control S sounds familiar. Wait. Oh, what does Control S do? Not anymore, it doesn't. Now Control S runs this macro. Do you see why you don't want my mother doing this? Yeah, she'd be calling me up. Every time I try to save my workbook, something strange happens. Mom, have you been playing with VBA again? Well, yes, it's so interesting. Mom, stop. Okay, next choice here is, where are we going to store it? We've got 3 options. We can store it in this workbook, which is where we're going to store it. We can make a brand new workbook and store it in the new workbook, or we can store it in a magic and mystical place called the Personal Macro Workbook. Oh, let me explain to you the Personal Macro Workbook. First of all, you have to realize, what macros can you run? You can have thousands of macros on your computer. Can you run them all? Can you run any arbitrary macro on your computer? No. What has to be true about that macro for you to be able to run it? It has to be It does not have to be in the workbook that I'm trying to modify. It doesn't have to be in the personal macro workbook. That's true. It has to be accessible. Now, we've had 3 answers. None of them are really right, so we'll stop there. We'll cut off the competition there. It has to be in an open workbook. That's what makes it accessible, is that it's in an open workbook. And so if you have a macro in an open workbook, you can run it. It can run on whatever workbook you want to run it on. Great. It's in that one over there. I'm going to run it on this one. I'll be able to run it. So the personal macro workbook is a workbook that Excel will automatically open for you every time Excel launches. And so you're saying, I've got some macros that I want to always have available. I'll put them in the personal macro workbook. And then I don't have to open the workbook. Excel will open the workbook for me. That's the great news if that's what you want. Don't play with it unless you really want it, because as soon as you create that personal macro workbook, every time from now until eternity, when you open Excel, it will open up the personal macro workbook as well. It'll open up and hide it. Probably not such a big deal as it used to be, because having an extra workbook open probably doesn't mean much anymore. But just realize that's what it is. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to do something here with our stock tickers, I'm going to put this in the personal macro workbook, and then I send this workbook to someone else, will that ticker be in it? Will that macro be in it? No, it'll be in my personal macro workbook. They won't have access to it. So almost everything we do, in fact, I think everything we do in this class, we're going to put them into this workbook. And that means the workbook that's active when we start recording. Now I'll put a description. Gets the PE ratio and the earnings per share for the ticker in the active cell from finance.yahoo.com. I've never written such a long description in my whole life. Okay, and now I'm ready. Oh, sorry, I don't want Control S, I forgot. I told you that was a bad idea, but I've never changed it. Let me put in here Control Shift S. I'll put a capital S in there, and that will change the keystroke to Control plus Shift plus S. It turns out there is only one letter that is not already assigned to a hotkey like a control key in Excel. I looked them all up. The only one is Control M. That's not mapped to anything. Handy, because you could think, oh, that's my macro, Control M. So whenever I make a hotkey, I always put a capital letter in, so Control plus Shift. I don't know what Control Shift S does. I've never used it for anything else, so I'm happy. Now, as soon as I say OK, I'm going to click on OK here. I got to be careful, because everything I do now is being recorded. Well, actually, even before I press OK, everything I do is being recorded in heaven. But now it's being recorded by Excel too, so I got to be extra careful. That's why I made sure I'm already on the place I want to start. Now, step 1, I want to copy that ticker. So you can use File, Copy, or whatever. I'm going to Control C to copy. And it just recorded. If we could look at the code, it just recorded whatever is currently selected, copy it. I'm going to click on the Web Query tab, and it just recorded. Out of all the sheets we have here, find the one called Web Query and activate it. Great. Now I'm going to click on A1. Now, fortunately, A1's not already selected for me. If A1 is already selected for you, you got to click off of A1 and click back onto A1 so that it will record. You really want to go to A1. And the good news is, if you click around a bunch of places, it only records the last place you ended off. Like this kind of arbitrary clicking around doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't get recorded. Okay, so now I'm going to paste. I'm just going to paste by hitting the Enter key. Control V would do the trick as well. And so now I've got the stock ticker that I want to work with. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to modify my existing web query to use that stock ticker. I want to have it go to finance.yahoo.com for Southwest Airlines so I can pull in the right data. So I'm going to record myself modifying the query. So to do that, first I have to activate somewhere inside the results of the query. So I'm going to come to A2. That's the first cell that's part of the result. And now I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Edit Query. It's going to bring back up my page. Here it is. Now, remember when I told you everything you do is going to get recorded? That's not entirely true. When we get to a dialog box like this one, the macro recorder says, oh, a dialog box. I can see you need a little personal time here. I'll avert my eyes. and it doesn't pay attention to what you're doing in the dialog box. But when you finally say OK, or in this case, when you say import, then it's going to go, okay, let's take a look at the dialog box. How is it configured? Oh, you got this, pop, 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 pop. Great, that's how it's configured. To record how it's configured. And so even if I was to come up here and try to paste in the URL, it wouldn't record the pasting. It wouldn't go, now paste whatever's on the clipboard. It would say, it would record, oh, you're trying to go to finance.yahoo.com for Yahoo. And the problem is that if we do that, it's going to have all these kinds of error messages. And so we're just going to deal with that in the code. So all I want to do here is I want to come and I want to click on import. So I didn't make any changes here, but the very fact that I opened it will be enough to generate the code that it takes to modify the query, modify the web query. We'll click on import. We'll let it import. Now, my next step is to go and find the earnings per share or the price earnings ratio, whichever one. I guess the price earnings ratio is first. The trouble is it's not here because I got the data from random.org. So at this point, I'm going to stop recording. And then we're going to go modify our code up to this point. So back on my developer tab, the button that used to say record now says stop recording. I'm going to click on that, and I'm ready to go take a look and see what I've done so far. Good news is it's not too bad. So how do I get there? On my developer tab, we've been there before by clicking this first button, Visual Basic, but it's not entirely clear when you're just starting off where that macro is going to be. So you'll end up here in the Visual Basic editor and go, well, where did it go? I don't know. Fortunately, if I come to my list of macros, it'll be really easy to find because there's only one. There it is, stock data. I could run it from here if I want, or I can come down to options and I can change the hotkey or the description. But the important thing here is that I can come to edit. If I click on edit, it will open up the Visual Basic environment and it will take me right to this particular macro. Ah, that's good. I don't have to worry about finding it. So let me go ahead and maximize this. I don't need my immediate window open, so I'll close that just so we can see a little more of this thing. And so now I have here my sub procedure called stock data. That's what I named it, stock data. Starts with a keyword sub, ends with a keyword end sub. And so that is the block. Those like the bookends for this macro. All the statements in here run together. I can have another set, another macro lower here in the module, and lots of macros in a module, and they all have their own name. They're all individual sets. But this one starts with a sub, ends with end sub. And so now let's go ahead and take a look at what happens here. Oh, even before we get to the recorded code, we have something neat here, and that is the idea of a comment. Anything that comes after a single quote is just a comment. It's a note. The interpreter, the software that looks at what I've written and makes it actually execute on the machine, says, I don't care what that says. That's not for me. That line that's green because it has a quote in front of it, that's for a human to understand, not for me. And so they've given us some information here. In case you missed it, 2 lines above, this is the stock data macro. That's really helpful. Thank you, recorder. Here, though, they have brought in the comment that I wrote. That's nice. That's here. And also very handy is they've given us the keyboard shortcut. Now, this is actually the keyboard shortcut that was applied to this when I recorded it. If I went and changed the keyboard shortcut, this note wouldn't update. It says you had a keyboard shortcut associated with this when you started. And so now here becomes our first line of executable code. This is the first line that got recorded. What was the first thing we did? We selected the cell before we started recording. After we started recording, what was the first thing we did? Yeah, we copied it. Here's what it is. Remember, object.property, object.method. Here we have the object selection. It's just saying, hey, whatever's selected, there's some object selected. It could be a chart. It could be a part of a chart. It could be a cell. I don't know what else could be selected. Maybe a shape or something on this sheet. And it's just saying, hey, whatever is selected, copy it. So we're assuming that we're going to have a cell copied because we're trying to copy a cell. And so what is this? What do you think? Property or method? Yeah, it's a method because this is an instruction by itself. We're telling it, selected cell, go copy yourself. Because the range itself knows how to take its value and put it to the Windows clipboard. That's what we're saying. Put it on the Windows clipboard so we can paste it somewhere else. So that's the first thing. Next thing we said, listen, we got a bunch of worksheets in this workbook. We want you to find the one called web query. Identified that. We've identified that object. And now we're calling it select method. It selects that. That's what makes that sheet active. Again, we're telling the worksheet, activate yourself. Or in this case, select yourself. Then we selected range A1 on that sheet, or cell A1. We referred to a particular range. We called the method select. This one seems a little bit weird, but We then said paste. We're pasting something into A1. But paste is a method of what? What kind of object is paste a method of? Yeah, that's not the kind of object. The active sheet is how we're using to identify a particular worksheet, but the paste method is the paste of a worksheet. It's not a cell that we paste to. We paste it to the worksheet. How does it know where to go? Yeah, it's because of whatever cell is active. When you paste to the sheet, it says, oh, we're going to paste whatever's on the clipboard. Now, depending on what's on the clipboard, it's going to behave very differently. If it's a chart, it's going to paste it somewhere. I don't know where it's going to paste it. But if it's just like, value from a cell, it goes, oh, I'll paste it to the active cell. And so paste is kind of like a general tool that behaves differently depending on what's on the clipboard. In this case, it's going to just paste the value into the active cell because that's what we have, value from a cell. Now, this next one is the first one that's a little bit of a head scratcher. Because this doesn't really apply to any activity that we did. You know that when you press Control-C, when you copy a cell in Excel, Excel goes into a special mode. That mode is called copy or cut copy mode or something. And things behave differently when you're in cut copy mode. What's different about Excel when you're in cut copy mode? Can you tell me anything that's different about it? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah, you have the little flashing lights or the marching ants going around the selection. Yeah, so that's right. And that's how you tell you're in cut copy mode. Something's selected and there's dancing, things are, it's lit up, it's flashing. What else is different? What key behaves, what key on the keyboard behaves very differently when you're in cut copy mode? Yeah, enter. Normally, enter commits a change to a cell and moves you down. When you're in cut copy mode, what does enter do? It pastes. And so, after we pasted, we actually have to come out of cut copy mode. And that probably happened, these may not be in the same order for you. If you pressed Control-V, I think you probably got the selection before you got cut copy mode. Is that right? Yeah? So the way I pasted was I hit enter. And when you hit enter, it pastes and it takes you out of cut copy mode. If you did Control-V, it did the paste, but it didn't take you out of cut copy mode until you came to do something that is incompatible with cut copy mode, and that's when you came to modify the web query. And so these two lines could be in a different order for you depending on how you pasted. So, I'll get to you in a second. So I came out of cut copy mode, I selected A2, and then I said I want to edit the query behind A2, and that's where this next block comes from. We'll talk about that in a second, but we've got a question.
So if we wanted to keep some copied or paste it, just part of a macro and paste it.
Keep it copied and pasted in multiple different places. Yeah, just get rid of this application cut copy mode, and it will stay in cut copy mode. It'll stay in cut copy mode as true until we tell it to go into false, or until we do something else that takes us out of cut copy mode. And in that case, for us, as soon as we start editing this web query, it's going to say, you're doing something incompatible with cut copy mode, we're going out of cut copy mode. Even if the statement's not here, it'll still come out of cut copy mode when we do that. So you could get rid of this statement, it would work just fine, but it's part of what gets recorded. Okay, so remember when I said it doesn't really pay attention to what you're doing in a dialog box, but when you're done, it just does it. That's what this next block is. But there's a syntax here we haven't seen yet, and it's called a with block. So here we say, we're going to do a potload of things with an object. I don't want to have to type that object over and over and over and over again. Instead, I'm going to say, with that object, do a bunch of stuff. And that's what this block does. It says with, and then it identifies, it has some code here that identifies an object. This says, look at the selection, and just refer to whatever query table or whatever query is behind that selection. That refers to the query object. It has an end with down here, and so everything between the with and the end with that starts with a dot. We didn't talk about anything starting with a dot. What did we say at the first day of class? You have an object, and then you have a dot, and then you have what? Two options. What are they? Properties or methods. Yeah. We never talked about something starting with a dot, and it happens in this syntax here because we're saying all of these things that start with a dot, just imagine that it says selection.queryTable right in front of it. It says that's the object that we're manipulating, and it's just kind of shorthand. It keeps your lines from getting really, really wide. Because you could say, yeah, I'm talking about a range, but I've got to say in front of that, which sheet am I talking about? And I could even say, you know what, I got multiple workbooks. Which workbook am I talking about? This is kind of long to get down to a cell. And I might even say, I got 3 or 4 copies of Excel open. Which copy of Excel am I talking about? You get long. And so this notation says, it might have some long statement to get you to the object, but now you're doing a bunch of things with this object. It makes your code a little bit more readable. I don't think it's a big deal, but that's the way the macro recorder does it. There was a question in here? Here. Okay, yeah. So the question is, how does this range A2 somehow connect up with this query table thing here? They're not really connected to each other directly, but here's what happens. We select A2, and that becomes the active cell. That becomes the selection. Now that cell is the one that's selected. And so here we say, with whatever is selected, what's selected right now? Yeah, A2 is selected because we just said select it. They're separate, but this says select A2, and now this says whatever is selected. In fact, if we wanted to, we can't record it this way, but if we were writing this, we could say range A2 dot query table. Identify the object we're talking about, and then go to the query table that's associated with that object. When we record, it always happens in this way. You select it and do something with the selection, because that's just the flow that happens. But if you're writing it, you just gotta have some way to get to that object. Don't worry so much about modifying this. We're gonna modify this as little as possible to get this code working. Okay, so now we've got lots of different properties and one method that we're working with this object, with that query table, with the query that we created, the web query. In fact, it turns out it's the same object for doing lots of different kinds of queries. How do I know this is a web query? Well, I made it, but besides that, when I look at the connection property, so this is the connection property of the web query, it starts with a URL. Oh, it's a URL. This is a web query. And then here's the URL that we built that query with. Random.org. What do we really want to be here? finance.yahoo.com. So I'm going to come back and just copy that. Fortunately, it's short enough you could type it if you haven't already made it there, but https:// that's the protocol. finance.yahoo.com, that gets me to the host, that gets me to the server, and then this is the path on the server that I'm getting to, go to the quote for Southwest Airlines. This next question? Oh yeah, so right now, what you've pointed out is that this is always going to be for Southwest Airlines. Let's leave it as Southwest Airlines for now, so we can see that it works, and then we're going to make it dynamic to pick up the right ticker. Yep. Okay, this next one is weird. They started recording this in 2013. And I don't know what they were trying to do with it, but it is not valid code. This will throw an error. In fact, here, let me just go ahead and do it. No, you just stay where you are. There's no reason for you to run this, but I'm going to come here and do Control-Shift. What did I say? Control-Shift-S? And it's going to take me right here. Invalid procedure call. They made this code and it doesn't even work. And as I said, it just, prior to 2013, it didn't used to be there, and it doesn't need to be here. So I'm going to use a little trick here, a little trick in programming. Instead of deleting that whole line, because here I'm still pretty new at this, and I'm thinking, I don't think that needs to be there, but I'm not positive, and I don't have to remember to type it back in again. So what am I going to do? Yeah, I'll put a single quote there, and that will turn that line into a comment. It's not really a comment for a future programmer, but that's what we tells the interpreter, ignore this line. This is not for you. This is not the code you're looking for. We could delete it. And it turns out, under my expert tutelage, we don't need that line. But if I was just trying to figure out why did that fail, maybe we don't need that line. I'm going to comment it out so that it's easy to bring back if I decide, I think I need to bring it back. Yeah. So it's, but you're right. You could delete it, and it would be just fine because that really is bad code. It must have been an intern that was working on the macro recorder back in 2012 or so, whenever that, I don't know. Okay, so now these other properties, again, these aren't things we change, but the macro recorder looks at that, says, this is how it's configured now that you're done with this. And it says, what kind of selection type are we bringing in? It's the whole page. That's great. What kind of formatting? No formatting. Formatting, none. And then, several other things here that I could probably figure out what they mean, but I'm not going to look at them. We're going to get down here to this. And in fact, because that's the way it's already configured, we could delete all of these as well. We're not changing them. We got to change the connection. But the rest of these is the way that's already configured. So we could delete it. But again, we're trying to modify this code as little as possible. Because what's our exercise today? Is it about web queries? No. It's about record and modify. Record yourself doing something, Take a look at the code. Don't be afraid of the code. What do you think? Is this code pretty readable? Yeah, it's not too bad, especially because these are things we just did ourselves. So record and look at what it does, and don't be afraid to play with it. Turn some code off, see what happens, and try to understand it. Now, we get to this last one. These are all properties until this one. This one's refresh. That sounds like a method, doesn't it? It sounds like an instruction. We're saying refresh the web query. So what is this after here? We got a little space here, and then this is an argument that's being sent to the method. We're telling it to refresh, but we're also telling it how to refresh. There's two options. It can refresh as a background query or not as a background query. So the background query parameter we can set to true or false. If we told this to be a background query is true, what do you think that would mean to our code? It means that query is going to run in the background. I just told it refresh, let it run, and VBA keep on running. And when that query comes in, great. It's running in the background. Background query false, so it's not a background query. What does it do? We say refresh, VBA pause. You wait until that query is done bringing its data back. Which one do you think we want, background query or not background query? If it's a background query, we've said, hey, give us this data, and we're going to wait, several seconds for that data to come back. If the VBA keeps running and goes on and gets the price earnings ratio, what are we getting? We're getting something before the data came back. So we got to tell it pause, and that's the way it recorded. And when it records, it says, we think you probably want to wait for this to come back. So it did that right, so that's good. Okay, so now we've noticed we still have a problem here because it's always bringing Southwest Airlines, and we don't have the code yet, but now this should actually give us the right query. Let's go see if it works. I'm going to come back to my code, back to my tickers page, and I'm going to come onto one of these tickers. Southwest Airlines is fine. Control-Shift-S, and hopefully that will activate the web query sheet, and it will bring in the data from finance.yahoo.com for Southwest Airlines. This looks pretty good because I'm now seeing Yahoo, which I didn't see before. Something about stock search, that looks great. I'll scroll down a little bit here. Oh, S&P 500. Oh, it's down 0.5%. That's not a good day. It's not a terribly bad day, but and down here around row 80, where are we? 87? Yeah, right here in row 87, I've got the price earnings ratio, the PE ratio. And that's the label, and then over here in column B. So now I've got the data. I can kind of continue on with my recording process. So now the data is here, I can record the process of doing that. And then we'll have to put these two macros together, but at least now the data is here, we can start recording again. Should we do it? Let's go ahead and finish off the recording process. Now, I left off on cell A2. So I'm going to go back to A2. It's probably not critical that I go back there, but I'm going to go to A2. Oh, how many of you have this worked for? How many of you actually pulled this data in? See a show of hands? Oh, most of you, great. So the question I want to know is, are you on line 87 for price earnings ratio, or do some of you have a different line? What line do you have? 86. Anyone else have a different line between 86 and 87? Ugh, that's going to be a problem. Now, if it was always on line 87, no problem. Go to line 87, go to column B, pull the data. Why do you suppose it's in a different column, a different place for me than for you? You probably didn't do anything different. Well, especially if you got that close. But there's lots of stuff coming in here above line 86, 87. And if something happens on that page to say, oh, you know what, this that used to come on one line now comes on two lines, maybe it's a different advertisement that's on the page, I can't rely on that being in the same location every time. So, any thoughts? Okay, something to find it. Now, lookup, we could probably do a lookup. That would probably work. But instead, we're going to record ourselves doing a find, like Control F find. VLOOKUP's interesting. We could look up that value and then go over one. Yeah. Kind of two different sides of the same coin, find or VLOOKUP. We'll use find. All right, so I think I'm ready to start recording again. I'm going to be in A2, and I'm going to go back to my developer tab and hit record. Now, what do we want to call this macro? Turns out macro 2 is a great name because ultimately we're going to merge these two macros. They're all going to run as our same one stock data or whatever it was called. I don't need a keyboard shortcut because this macro is going to lose its identity. So I'll just start recording. Now, don't work ahead. Don't think you know what's happening. Stick with me on this one. I'm going to find Control F. And I'm going to find capital PE space ratio. I'm going to get capitalization correct, R-A-T-I-O. R-A-T-I-O, space, open parenthesis, TTM, trailing 12 months. So this is the PE ratio for the last 12 months. And I want to make sure that I don't accidentally find PE ratio in some note before this. So I'm going to tell it, listen, match the case, search for the entire contents of the cell, match the entire contents of the cell, and maybe even search by column. That'll go down that column first before it moves over. I want to limit the possibility of me hitting a false positive. I am looking for that particular cell's capitalization, all the same and so forth. And then I'm going to say find next. Okay, so it found it there on 87. And stand by, don't do anything without me. I'm going to close this. So I've just recorded two things. Find that cell and activate that cell or select that cell. Now, if I just were to click on B87 at this point, what would it record? Yeah, it would record, go to B87. I don't want to go to B87. Where do I want to go? Yeah, now you're used to, in formulas, you're used to writing formulas that use absolute references versus relative references. There's the same notion in recording. So far, we've been recording everything with absolute reference, which is the default, but now I want to say, no. I want to say use relative references. If I click, and I can turn this on and off while I'm recording, I'll click on use relative references, and you'll notice when I move my cursor off of that, it stays dark. It's been selected now. So now when I click one cell to the right, it's going to go, oh, you want to go one cell to the right. So it just recorded that as a relative move. What's that? That is cool. Yes, thank you. I thought of it myself. Okay, so now I'm going to copy, Control-C. I'm going to select my tickers sheet. Now what do I want? Do I want relative or absolute as I go here? Yeah, relative, because someday I'm going to be down here on Apple. I want to go straight over just one cell. So I'll go there, press Enter to paste. Back to my web query sheet. Now what do you think? Next one down is my earnings per share. That's the next one I'm after. Should I get that or should I search for it? What do you think? I don't think so. It's right next to it. I mean, I have to squeeze something else in there. Yeah, they could change the code, but of course, changing the code, they could even change it, so that price earnings ratio comes below instead of coming to the left of it or to the right of it. And so, yeah, we're going to have to, it might make sense for us to do a little bit of snooping, right? And once we get a little more sophisticated, we could say, does this even look right? Now I found price earnings ratio. Does it say earnings per share below it? Does it say beta right above it? And if so, I go, I'm pretty comfortable. This came back the way I was expecting it. So we're not going to do that today because we're just trying to do minimal amount of changes to the code. So for simplicity, I'm just going to select the next one down. It's going to say go down one cell. I think we're okay with that. I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to go back to my tickers. We're still on absolute references. I'm going to paste here. Am I done? One more thing to do. What is it? Yeah, I'm still on relative references. I'm going to say come down one row, go backwards 3 columns, select that, and now I'm done recording. I'll come up here and click stop recording. Okay. Whew. Let's go back and take a look at the code, and let's kind of walk through what we recorded here. So back in the code, I'm going to scroll up just a bit. Here's my macro 2. It starts with find. That was the first thing I did. Find. Cells is the collection of all the cells on the active worksheet. This is looking across all the cells. If I wanted to, and again, we're not going to do it today, but if I wanted to, I could say, no, limit that just to the cells in column A. So we could tune this up a little bit, but find doesn't do that. Find says, search across the whole sheet. Okay, so look at this. Right here is the end sub for my stock data macro. That's where that one ends. That's where this one begins. Are you ready for this little trick? I'm going to delete those 2 lines, and poof, they're now one. Now the other one doesn't stop. The next one doesn't start. It now starts way up here where it used to start, and it ends all the way at the bottom where this one is. So I've just merged those 2 macros together. That was a breeze. In fact, these other comments, I don't need these here. I'll get rid of those as well. So the macro 2 now is just gone. Yeah. Well, it's not gone so much as it's been merged. It's been assimilated. Resistance was entirely futile there. And we just put them together into one. All the code from macro 1 is there, but macro 1 no longer exists. It's lost its individual identity and has been assumed by the collective. Okay, so now after we have modified our query and we refreshed our query, we're now ready to say we're going to find, look at, starting with all the cells on that worksheet, we are going to find what? PE ratio for the trailing 12 months. And that's great. We're going to look after the active cell. We're going to look in formulas at the whole value, search by columns. All that stuff we set up is here. Now this is a little bit more complex than we've seen before. Right up to here, these are all of the arguments we're giving the find method. So we're telling it to find, but it has to know what to find and how to look for it. We got to give it all this list of arguments. Find it this way. And now once it finds it, once that method is done, it finds it, it will now actually refer to the cell that it found. There's lots of ways to refer to a cell. Active cell. We could say range B77. We could say, did we talk about the cells method? We can say, you give it cells, you can give it a row number and a column. There are lots of ways to get there. Here's another way to refer to a cell. We can refer to a cell by saying find and describe it this way, and then that refers to the cell. This now is a reference to an object. Right up here, reference to an object. And so we can call the activate method on that cell, and it now becomes active. This one's a little more complex. We're doing a lot of things here with this one line. Referring to a range, calling its method. That's going to refer to a range itself. We're calling a method of the range that it found. Ooh, they can get longer than that, believe me. So that's going to activate that cell, and now here's that relative move. From the active cell, offset. 0 rows and 1 column. Stay on the same row, go to the right 1 column. And then select it. This range A1 in the middle, how I wish it did not get recorded. This has nothing to do with range A1. This says, once I referred to that cell that's offset 0 rows and 1 column, maybe I'm going to select more than one cell. And that's what this lets me do. What this says, it says pretend that whatever cell I've identified before this .range A1 is the upper left-hand corner of the worksheet. And if that was the upper left-hand corner of the worksheet, I want to select 2 rows and 3 columns. I would say A1 to C2. And that would say from here, execute that, refer to that. Since this is only A1, it's talking about that cell. And so it's confused. This is the worst thing about today. This is confusing. It doesn't need to be here. How I wish the macro recorder didn't record it. It doesn't do anything. In fact, we could get rid of it, and it would work just exactly the same. You could leave it there. It would work exactly the same. It's okay. I'm going to get rid of that one. We'll leave the other ones in place. So this says, from that cell that we found, move over 1 column and select it. Then copy whatever is selected. Go back to the ticker sheet. There, move over 1 column on the same row, and then paste. That's going to bring us out of cut copy mode. We're going to come back over to the web query worksheet. We're going to offset now down 1 row, stay on the same column. Copy and go back to the ticker sheet. There we're going to go on the same row over 1 column, and we'll select that and then paste. Then we're going to go down 1 row, backwards 2 columns, and select, and there we're done. So we should be able now to run this, and it should bring in some data on whatever row we select. Now, it's still going to be Southwest Airlines data, but it should be, somewhat satisfying to come here and press Control-Shift-S and have it bring data in. So excited. It's coming. There it is. What a coincidence. American Express is trading for exactly the same as Southwest Airlines because we're hard-coded in there. Questions? How are we feeling so far? Okay, let's go make the final modification, which is to tell it to actually use the stock ticker. Now, the whole reason why we started off by copying that stock ticker and pasting it up here into A1 is so that we would know exactly where that stock ticker is. We know it's an A1. We can tell it exactly where to get the value. So I'm going to come back up to here to where the URL is specified. And to really understand this, we're going to take just a very brief detour here. As I look here at selection.copy, the VBA interpreter has to look at this and has to figure it out. It goes selection. That sounds familiar. Selection. What is that? Oh, it's whatever is currently selected. It has to go figure out what's selected. It goes, oh, it's a range that's selected. That's the range. It figures that out. It gets to the word copy. It has to figure out what is copy. Oh, is it an object? Is it a method? What is it? Oh, it's a method. It's a method of that object. And it has to figure out everything what to do. Now, we get to something that we say, hey, there's some characters, VBA, for you to keep track of, but these are not for you to try to understand. The way I tell it that is by putting them in double quotes. So when I put these characters inside of double quotes, when the VBA interpreter gets to here, it goes, oh, here's a bunch of characters. I don't got to figure those out. They don't mean anything to me. That's for something else to use. Like when I look at here, VBA doesn't have to figure out what web query means. All VBA has to do is it has to take these characters and pass it to the sheets method that's going to figure out what sheet it is. That object knows what to do with these. Same thing with the range object. This range object knows what to do with these characters. VBA is not figuring it out. It's just keeping track of them. Same thing here. This URL is going to be something that this web queries processes. VBA is just keeping track of it. And so now we're going to say, great, we don't want to, I mean, the problem here is that what's the computer looking for every time here? Well, actually, it's looking for love, as it turns out, in all the wrong places. And so we're going to delete the love. It's sad. And I'm going to now smush onto here the value of what's in A1. Smush is not the technical term. The technical term is concatenate. I'm going to take whatever I got there in this string literal, it's called a string literal, just a collection of characters, and I'm going to concatenate on something that VBA does figure out. How do I, in fact, if this were a formula, how would I take two things and smush them together? How would I concatenate them? Ampersand character. Good news, it's the same character here. And now, how do I tell it go get whatever's in range A1? Oh, look at that, range A1. That's how I refer to range A1. Now, I don't want to select A1. I just want to refer to it and pull off one of its properties. What property do I want? Its value. So now the VBA interpreter looks at this and it says, okay, collection of characters, great. It gets to here and it goes, ah, ha, 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 range, range, that's a method. I know what to do with that. And it figures out, we're talking about the value, it figures out what that value is, it goes, American Express, AXP. And it's going to concatenate AXP right on the end of that. That is it, folks. This thing now works. I'm going to come back over here, run it one more time, come over here to tickers. I'm going to do Apple. Be on Apple, Control-Shift-S. And that's going to bring in the real numbers for Apple. Come on, baby. There it is. That was fast. I still feel that's really slow. It turns out that site used to respond a lot more quickly than it does now, but it's still a lot better than doing it by hand. Okay, well, if I only had these 7 tickers to do, I'm done. I'll press Control-Shift-S 7 times. But what if I've got 700? What's the problem? My pinky's going to get sore from pressing Control-Shift-S for hours. And so what I really want to have happen is I want to say, hey, run this, but VBA, I want you to do it over and over and over. So to do this, we have to make something in programming lingo called a loop. We got a whole day on loops coming up, but we're going to kind of jump in and just see a sample of a loop right now. Now, I could write this loop kind of around this code, but it turns out this get stock data or this stock data subprocedure is pretty good by itself because this just gets 1 for me. That's functional by itself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up before this and make another subprocedure. I'm making a macro by hand. I'm typing it in. I'm going to call this one get all data. And I'm going to make this one do exactly the same thing as the other one just by saying call stock data. And so now these two macros do exactly the same thing. In fact, one just invokes the other. Here's what I like to do. If I'm saying get all data, I want to do a couple of things. I want to make sure that I have selected the right sheet, and I want to be sure that I have selected the right cell. So I'm just going to copy these lines from down below, and I'm going to make sure I select my ticker sheet. And I want to start not on A1, but on A2. That's my first stock ticker. So that's going to give me the right place to start. And now I want to do this part over and over and over. And that's what the loop is for. Here's how I make a loop in VBA. There's actually three main ways to do it. There's even some other kind of cheating ways to do it. But I'm going to come here and say do. Do is nothing more than a marker. It says this is the beginning of a loop. At some point in the future of this code, it's going to tell me to come back to this beginning. And this is where I'm coming back to. It does nothing but say, here's the beginning. These are outside of the loop. I don't want to do this part over and over again. I want to do this part over and over again. And so now I'm going to come here after I'm done calling stock data, and I'm going to say loop. Loop just says go back to the prior do. And so what happens here, it's going to come along and say, great, select the right sheet, go to the right cell, and now start a loop. Call stock data. We'll come down here to stock data. We'll run all these lines. Bing, 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 bing. Go through all these. When it's done with all of these, it'll come right back up here and say, great, I just finished that. So I come back here, and I get to the next step. It says loop. What does loop say? Go back to the do. Great, I'm back to the do. Call stock data. Come down here. Bing, 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 bing. I'm done. I come back here. I hit loop. Back to the top. Call stock data. Bing, 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 bing. You might think that would get boring. Not for the interpreter. The interpreter is thrilled. Right? It's sitting around for most of it. Can you imagine this interpreter? I mean, most folks don't even know that VBA exists in Excel. I spend its whole life sitting around. Someone going to write code for me today? No. How about today? No. Finally, it's got something to do. It's thrilled. So thrilled is it that it won't pay attention to anything else. It's a little worried. If I even look up for a moment, someone's going to tell me to stop. I won't even look. Trouble is, we want to tell it to stop somehow. And so anytime we make a loop, especially when we're beginning, we're going to put this little statement in here called do events. Do events is not an object, it's not a method, it's a part of the VBA language. It just says, all right, processor, stop for a moment and listen to me because I might be trying to get your attention. If you hit run, before we put that do events in there, you would put yourself into an endless loop. What gets us out of this loop? How long is this loop going to run? Well, forever is really long. It won't run forever. I mean, it will run until there's a power failure or there's a network outage or a nuclear holocaust or the second coming. It will run until something really unusual happens. In this case, the code takes me down a row every time. Boom, boom. Eventually, where's it going to go? It'll go to the very last one, 1.04 million rows later, and it's going to try to go to 1.04, one too far. That's going to cause an error. It's going to stop. How long would that take? Months. It'll take months to get there. In fact, in the early 2000s, I was looking at a cellular plan. Unlimited minutes, they said. Unlimited minutes. I said, really unlimited? What if I talk for 1,000 minutes? Doesn't cost you any more. What if I talk for 2,000 minutes? Doesn't cost you. He said, look, you could talk for 1 million minutes in a month. It wouldn't cost you any more. And I said, talk for 1 million minutes? Is there 1 million minutes in a month? He goes, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there's anywhere near 1 million minutes in a month. There's not. I mean, there's nowhere near 1 million. Anyway, it would take a while to get there. So, but I don't want to have to do something harsh to get out. This would at least let me yank it out. Stop it and grab it by its ears and say, cut it out. But what I do want to do is I want to come here and give it a way out. So here's what I'm going to do. At the very beginning of each loop, I want to check to see if something's true. And if it is, it's going to get me out. Here's how I do it. Until the active cell is equal to something. Oh, the active cell's value. Sorry, active cell's the object, dot value is equal to something. So why don't I go ahead and put in here like stop, S-T-O-P. Now I could go to the bottom of my stock tickers and I could put in stop in capital letters. And now when the active cell's value is stop, it would let me out of the loop. Well, what's the problem with doing this? Well, you got to type in stop. It's not a big deal, but the problem is, for all I know, stop could be a real stock ticker. Someone could be trying to get the stock ticker, for stop.com or whatever it is. So maybe I'll put stow or nothing. Yeah, it seems like a really weird way to say it, but that's how we say empty. Quote, quote. It's a collection of characters with what in it? Nothing. And so now it's going to continue executing. At the top of each loop, it's going to say, am I supposed to keep going? And if it's blank, it's going to say, no, I got to get out of here. Question? So the question is, if you're in an unending loop, how do you get out? And the answer is, do you have do events in the loop? Is that in the loop already? The question is, do you? Okay, good. If you do, I was hoping you were actually in this situation. If you have do events, you hit the pause button, and that'll stop it. Or the stop button will stop it as well. Or control break. So control break should take you there. If do events is not in there, you either reboot your computer or you kill Excel. There's no way in. That's why we want to put do events in there anytime we have a loop. Okay, one last thing, folks, and that is we're going to see this run, but I want to have a way to be able to call this. I don't ever want to send what does Control-Shift-D do? What does Control-Shift-D run? Or Control-Shift-S? Yeah, it's just the one. It gets the one. I don't have any hotkey that does the other one. I can put a hotkey on it, or I can come to my developer tab, and I can choose this little lunchbox here. Well, I guess it's a toolbox. It's got a wrench and a screwdriver by it. I'm going to drop down, and the very first tool is a button. I'm going to click on that tool, and then I'm going to draw a button right on my form, or right on my page. It's going to say, you're making a button. I bet you want to run a macro. I do, in fact, want to run a macro. Which one do I want? Stock data. No, get all data. Get all data. I'll say OK, and now there's a button, and now I'm going to change what's on it to be get data. And now, it'll take probably more time than we have in the last, I guess we're done now, but I'll run that. It now is calling that. Step 1, just make sure this is a selected sheet. Step 2, go to A2, and then start running that thing. Bing, 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 bing. When it's done, let's see, you can kind of see it here. We can see Goog now is on A1. That's where I pasted Goog, and we'll probably kind of see it update a little bit. Maybe the next one will show Apple. Oh, and we can see some of these have come in. So when we get a little more sophisticated, we can control what gets shown and when on the screen. But for now, that was pretty good. We record ourselves doing some things. We had to do some little tricks by pausing and then merging these two together. Had to make a couple of changes, correct a mistake that Microsoft made with the recorder, and adapt to be able to handle the current stock ticker. But now we're running that. Folks, what am I going to do? I got 700 of these. I'm probably going to get a ham sandwich. Oh, I'd like to know when this thing's done. How am I going to know when it's done? Now, I'm going to tell Excel, hey, by the way, when you're done, slave, send me a text message so I can come back and get back to work. Can we have Excel send you a text message? Yeah, I'll teach you how to do that in this class. It's later in the class, but we'll have you do that as well. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.